Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Man, it has been a long time since I've talked about the Model 3. I've had this car for actually over a year now, and I figured it's the perfect time to actually talk about it, talk about my experiences, the good and the bad, and whether or not you should consider either a Model 3 or really any Tesla. We did a little weekend trip up here to Big Bear. It is nice, beautiful weather. Everything looks so good, but that means the car is filthy. So just ignore that. But I have a dual motor, long range Model 3. It's a 2019 model, although the year models don't matter all that much with this car. I also got it in blue. I have the Aero wheel kit. And I've also added on top the roof rack. That's a pretty new addition. So that is the car that I particularly got. I didn't go all out for the performance. I didn't get the performance wheels. I've talked about that before on why I chose this particular car, but too long didn't read, or I guess didn't watch in this case. I love this car. I haven't had really any issues with it, which you would hope for a car that's a year old. But being that this is my first electric car, there were definitely questions I had going in, and I think after a year, all of them have been answered. Before we get into everything else, I think right up front, I want to address the issues and the non-issues. When you go into the Model 3 and you start researching, as I think most people do, you hear all of these horror stories about horrible paint, bad alignment, horrible service, and then you hear the other side where this is the perfect car literally developed by Jesus himself. I was hoping I wouldn't be on the horrible end, but I also wasn't expecting to have a perfect car. And after a year, it hasn't been perfect, but my expectations have been exceeded. Now, I haven't had no problems, but the car has held up extremely well. And some of the worries that I had going into the car just haven't been issues whatsoever. When I first got my car, there was no body issues. I checked the car meticulously. I hadn't had any issues. I did have to take in my car one time, and it was only about a month into ownership because from the factory, my alignment was off for whatever reason. They fixed that under warranty, no problem. And for whatever reason, if I left the car out in the sun and it got hot, when I would then turn on the AC on kind of full blast, 7 to 10 range fan speed, I would get this weird little like flickering noise from the vent right in front of the driver's seat. That was weird, so I took that in for that. They took apart the entire front console and got into the air conditioning, and guess what it was? It was a sticker. Something from manufacturing or whatever was just coming loose in the heat, and it would start flapping around. That's why it didn't happen when it was cold. It was such a weird issue, but not a big deal in the long term. Other than that, since that first experience, I have not had a single problem. Another thing I was worried about was the paint. There's a ton of people that get wraps on their Model 3 or they get PPF so that it's protected. That's just not something I was going to do, or I didn't think I was going to do, and I still haven't. And those dreaded rock chips and bad paint that everyone talks about, I just haven't experienced. I road trip quite often. I go on a lot of trips, and the front end, when it's nice and clean, still looks pretty good. I mean, of course, there is normal wear and tear, but that happens with every single car, and it's not any worse, or actually it's better than I expected it to be. I expected it to be worse, and it's just not. There has never been a single time where I've showed someone my car, I've let them ride in it, or they've just been interested, where they look at the white seats and they just cannot comprehend either why you would get white seats or how they actually would stay clean. And I tell them, look, they look clean. Now, I'm not gonna say it's perfect. If you look at the seats and you look for it, you can see that obviously there was some wear and tear there. It is a little dirty, but I've never once cleaned them, or at least deep cleaned them. I have, of course, vacuumed them and wiped them down for dust, but I've never actually tried to scrub away and get some dirt out. So the fact that they look relatively clean and new, if you're just looking at the seats at a glance, I don't think you would notice that they were dirty. It's really, once you get in there and look, you'll notice, okay, someone's obviously sat here. But I am a believer. I love the way the white seats look. It's probably one of my favorite features that I chose with the car. It's one of those things that obviously isn't necessary, but it just adds another level to the car. And I have to say that if you are in the camp of wanting the white seats, but you're worried about it, I wouldn't worry at all. They held up really well. Now, real quick before we continue, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community offering thousands of classes to help your learning career. And they offer classes in really anything creative: photography, design, illustration, business. I mean, really anything you can think of in the creative field, Skillshare has a class for you. And what's great is that Skillshare offers classes for every skill level as well. So whether or not you're just starting out dabbling to see if it's something you want to try, maybe photography for instance, or if you're an expert and you're just trying to learn maybe some new techniques that you hadn't heard of before, Skillshare has options for you. Plus, Skillshare is always offering new classes, so you might find something that you didn't even know you wanted to learn, and it'll pop up right in front of you. One of my favorite classes recently is iPad illustration. Everyone who watches this channel knows I love my iPad, and getting to use that tool more and more and get better at it is something that I love. You can get Skillshare Premium for less than $10 a month, but for the first 1,000 of you to check the link down in the description, you can get a free trial of Skillshare Premium at no cost. So check it out and get learning. So those were the issues and non-issues, but beyond that, how has it been to own this car for over a year? And I think that really comes down to three main things. It's driving, charging, and overall just experience of this car versus others. When it comes to driving, there's something different about this car that I wasn't expecting and I never really had in any other car. And I'm not exactly sure what the reason is, but let me put it this way. I've driven plenty of cars in my day. I've driven high performance ones, but this is the only car that a year in, like every single time I get in the car, I am just giddy and happy and excited. I don't know if it's the dual motor torque and the fact that it's electric and it's really quiet, or if it's just that driving dynamics, because this car does handle really well, or if it's things like Autopilot. I'm sure it's a combination of all of those, but every single time I get in this car, I'm just happy to drive it. But what I really think it is that for me personally, I love technology and I love cars. So this is the perfect melding of those. You get high-tech features that really still, all these years later, are unmatched for a lot of car companies, even though there are some issues for sure. But you also get the high-performance, amazing car that performs well, handles well, and does everything you would want from a car in this price range. And going along with that, the tech in this car, like I said, is just unmatched. And I know everyone talks about the software updates in Tesla videos, but it's because it's true. Software updates bring so much to this car. Here's a list of improvements that I've gotten since the car was delivered to me in no particular order. I've gotten Sentry mode and dash cam, so it uses the cameras to record, and if anything happens, I'll have that. I've gotten the Sentry and dash cam viewer, so now I don't have to take the drive out and plug it in my computer. I can watch it right from the car. The visualizations on the screen of what's around you. It can now see traffic signals, stop signs, speed signs, cones, lane markings, trash cans. I mean, it can see a ton. It has also gotten Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, it's gotten games. It's gotten one pedal braking, so I pretty much never have to actually touch the brake. It's gotten Spotify streaming, which for me has actually made me cancel my Apple Music subscription. It got Joe mode to make the noises a little bit more pleasant. It's gotten faster and it's gotten more range. I can now control more through the app. I mean, this is just the list I can come up with off the top of my head. These are the features I actually use. There are definitely more that I'm forgetting, but none of these were there when I got the car, and I wasn't expecting to get any of them, but I have, and they have all been free. And that is something you just cannot say about any other car out there. All the talk about improvements and software updates are real. Everyone talks about it, but it's because it's such an integral part to this car and really the company. It makes your investment feel a little less like a depreciating asset and more like an appreciating one. Although Elon would like you to think it actually is an appreciating one, that remains to be seen. But when you get into your car and you have a new set of features that you didn't have the day before, it just feels good. Now, I'm not going to talk about Autopilot all that much, but let's just say this. It's awesome. I don't have the full self-driving package. I just have the basic Autopilot, and I love it. It doesn't do that much compared to the full self-driving package. So all it does is auto steer and cruise control, but that combination alone is game-changing. It changes how you take trips. It changes how you commute. Everything you can think of the driving, especially on the highway, Autopilot really takes advantage of it. And again, that's coming from me who just has the basic standard package. Do I wish I upgraded? Yes, there are definitely days where I wish I had the full self-driving package, but for now, I mean, it's fine. And considering that full self-driving isn't going to be a thing for quite a while, I'm okay not having spent that money. One of the main questions with electric cars is range and charging, and I'm in an interesting situation for a few reasons. So I don't, at least until very recently, like 2 weeks ago, don't have a place to charge at home. So for the majority of the time I've had this car, I have relied on public chargers and superchargers. But I'm also in an interesting situation where, because of these videos, I have more supercharging miles than I know what to do with. So if I ever supercharge, which is pretty frequently, I don't pay for it at all. So my cost to charge ratio is extremely low. So it's honestly hard for me to talk about what it costs to charge your car because my situation is just so different from a lot of people. But I will leave some links down below to other people that I trust and know that have some great information on that. So go check that out if you're interested. It just wouldn't be fair for me to give you my stats because they are completely skewed from, honestly, reality. But what I think a lot of people aren't all that different from is maybe you don't have a place to charge it. Most people with an electric car charge it at home, so you never have to think about charging, or you charge it at work, same situation. But if you live in an apartment complex like me, sometimes that's just not the case, or sometimes you can't get one installed at your house. There's just a myriad of reasons why you won't be able to charge the car every day or as conveniently as some others out there. But I haven't had that much of an issue with it. Yes, having to go somewhere else to charge, which obviously you would have to do with gas as well, but it takes so much longer with electric. It's not the most convenient thing in the world, but it has definitely become routine. It's part of my, not day-to-day, but weekly routine. But it's definitely a consideration you have to make. If you can't charge at home or at work on a daily basis or in what is deemed the best manner, maybe you wouldn't want to get the car. But that is a trade-off that I am willing to make. It hasn't affected my life in any horrible way. It has definitely changed my routines, but it's not an issue that really I think about at all anymore. Another big part of charging for me especially is road trips. I do a lot of them. I travel a lot with this car, and you just can't stop at a gas station to fill up, and it is definitely a thing to get used to. You have to adjust how you take a road trip, and there's a lot of pros and cons to that. Of course, it's going to take longer. You're probably going to have to tack on at least an hour for a really long road trip because you're going to want to stop probably 2 times if, like, say you're going on a 6-hour road trip or something. But I have found that I've actually adjusted my expectations. The charging is part of the road trip now. I know it's going to take longer, so that means I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to try to get there as fast as possible. I know I'm going to stop, and usually I want to stop anyway to go to the restroom or get something to eat. And it's something that has definitely changed, but I am totally used to it. And in some strange ways, maybe this is like Tesla derangement syndrome or something, but I kind of enjoy having to stop and charge. I know that sounds weird, but it's kind of true. So that's a year, a little bit over a year with the Tesla Model 3. I love this car. It is definitely my favorite car I've ever had, and I don't regret it at all. But if you're someone who has doubts about whether an electric car can work in your life, I think you'd be surprised. All the things I was worried about ended up not being worries, and even though it's not a perfect experience, of course, nothing is, it has exceeded my expectations, which honestly were extremely high to begin with. I don't know what car I'm going to be getting after the Tesla Model 3, but it has made such a huge impression on me that whatever it is that I get next will have to live up to that expectation. And the competition hasn't caught up yet. It's been quite a few years and it still hasn't happened. I hope it happens soon because I would love to see more people's take on what Tesla is doing. But until then, I am absolutely loving the Tesla Model 3. I can't recommend it enough, and I think you wouldn't be disappointed if you got one.